Have you ever questioned the origin story we've all been taught since childhood? What if everything you thought you knew about human beginnings was just one chapter in a much longer, more fascinating story? The biblical tale of Adam and Eve stands as perhaps the most recognized creation narrative in human history. But what if they weren't actually the first humans to walk the earth? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world, and if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our future videos. Edgar Cayce, often called the Sleeping Prophet, shared thousands of readings during his lifetime that challenge our fundamental understanding of human origins. His revelations about our past are both provocative and compelling, suggesting a history far more complex than what's written in religious texts. Has this ever happened to you? You're reading the book of Genesis, and something just doesn't quite add up about the timeline or the sudden appearance of civilization. Those moments of doubt might be more significant than you realize. Cayce's psychic readings offer an alternative perspective that's both controversial and thought-provoking. According to his visions, human existence stretches back much further than the Garden of Eden story suggests. In fact, his readings propose that advanced human civilizations thrived on Earth long before Adam and Eve entered the biblical narrative. I discovered these alternative theories while researching ancient mysteries, and what you're about to learn might completely transform your understanding of human history. Stay with me until the end, because these revelations aren't just academic curiosities. They potentially reconnect us with lost chapters of our collective past. The implications are profound. If Cayce's readings contain truth, we must reconsider not just biblical timelines, but potentially our entire understanding of human development. His accounts speak of souls experiencing Earth long before the commonly accepted timeline, suggesting that Adam and Eve represent not the first humans, but perhaps a significant spiritual transition point in human evolution. What's particularly fascinating is how Cayce's perspectives sometimes align with archaeological discoveries that conventional history struggles to explain. Ancient monuments, mysterious artifacts, and archaeological anomalies across the globe hint at sophisticated human activity dating back much further than mainstream science once acknowledged. But before we dismiss traditional religious narratives, we should consider what Cayce's readings actually suggest about Adam and Eve's significance. Their story might represent something far more profound than a literal first couple. Subscribe to continue our journey into consciousness expansion and ancient wisdom brought into modern light. So now that we've established Cayce's extraordinary reputation as America's most documented psychic, let's explore some of his most fascinating revelations about human origins. During his remarkable trance sessions at the Association for Research and Enlightenment, ARE, Cayce would lie down, enter a sleep-like state, and begin speaking in a voice that seemed to access universal knowledge. His wife would ask questions, and his secretary would diligently record every word. This process created one of the largest collections of psychic information in history, over 14,000 documented readings that continue to baffle experts today. What's particularly intriguing is how Cayce's life transformation happened almost by accident. This humble Kentucky man, with minimal formal education, became a channel for information that challenged conventional wisdom about our past. The ARE still maintains these records in Virginia Beach, where researchers continue studying his insights decades after his death. In a particularly illuminating reading from 1932, Cayce revealed something that shattered traditional biblical timelines. He spoke of what he called pre-Adamic races, human-like beings that existed on Earth long before the biblical Adam. According to Cayce, these weren't primitive creatures, but complex souls already engaged in a spiritual journey. This revelation suggests our human story extends much further back than conventional archaeology or religious texts indicate. What makes this especially relevant to our modern understanding is how Cayce described soul evolution. He portrayed Earth as a kind of school for developing consciousness, where souls would incarnate repeatedly to learn particular lessons. These pre-Adamic beings weren't separate from us, they were us in earlier forms of development. This hidden truth about our origins suggests that humanity didn't suddenly appear 6,000 years ago, as some literal biblical interpretations claim, but rather emerged through a lengthy evolutionary process guided by spiritual forces. Cayce's descriptions paint a picture of ancient Earth populated by souls in various stages of development, experimenting with physical form long before recorded history. He spoke of these early humans with such detail and conviction that many researchers have dedicated their lives to correlating his statements with archaeological discoveries. The fascinating aspect is how often new scientific findings seem to validate perspectives that initially appeared outlandish. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining what Cayce revealed about the 5 root races of humanity and how they connect to ancient civilizations most of us have never heard about. His readings describe advanced societies that existed tens of thousands of years before mainstream archaeology acknowledges, and the evidence supporting these claims continues mounting in surprising ways. If what I've shared so far resonates with your own intuition about our deeper human story, write in the comments. Our history runs deeper than we've been told. I'd love to know how many of you sense there's more to our origins than conventional narratives suggest. What if I told you that the conventional timeline of human existence, as taught in schools and textbooks, might be dramatically incomplete? That's exactly what Edgar Cayce suggested in his readings about Adam, presenting him not as the first human being, but rather as the first with what he called a living soul. This distinction is transformative to our understanding of ancient history. According to Cayce, Adam represented a pivotal evolutionary milestone, not the beginning of humanity itself, but the emergence of spiritual consciousness within our species. This soul awareness, this divine spark that separates us from other living creatures, was what made Adam significant in Cayce's cosmology. The implications are profound. If Adam was merely the first spiritually awakened human, rather than the first human altogether, it opens the possibility for countless generations of pre-Adamic peoples who walked the earth long before biblical chronology begins. People who built societies, developed technologies, and lived complex lives that have been erased from our conventional historical narrative. This brings us to one of Cayce's most remarkable assertions, that our current civilization is but the latest chapter in a much longer human story. His readings frequently referenced advanced civilizations like Lemuria and Atlantis, describing them not as mythological fantasies, but as tangible historical realities that rose, flourished, and ultimately collapsed long before our earliest recorded history. These forgotten chapters of human experience weren't merely primitive settlements. Cayce described technological achievements that would rival or even surpass our own modern capabilities. He spoke of energy systems, aviation, and even genetic manipulation occurring in these ancient societies, developments we typically associate with cutting-edge contemporary science. The concealed journey of humanity, according to Cayce, included multiple global catastrophes that repeatedly reset the progress of civilization. Each time, small groups of survivors would carry forward fragments of knowledge, becoming the mysterious initiators of the next cultural renaissance. This pattern of revelation, advancement, corruption, and destruction forms a cyclical understanding of human history that challenges our linear perspective. Now, I want to go even deeper into this controversial territory. If Cayce's readings about these prehistoric advanced civilizations contain any truth, we must reconsider not just history, but the very nature of human potential. The psychic claimed these ancient peoples possessed abilities we would consider supernatural today, from telepathy to manipulation of physical matter. Through consciousness alone, these weren't presented as magical powers, but as natural human capabilities that we have simply forgotten how to access. Join our community by subscribing to access more explorations of intuitive knowledge that science is only beginning to understand. The archaeological record itself presents anomalies that conventional history struggles to explain. From megalithic structures built with engineering precision that challenges modern capabilities, to artifacts that seem anachronistic or impossibly sophisticated for their attributed time periods. Could these be the echoes of the advanced civilizations Cayce described? If you're finding these possibilities as fascinating as I do, write in the comments, "History needs rewriting." I'd love to know how many of you are open to questioning the established timeline of civilization as we've been taught. Now let's explore the deeper meaning behind Cayce's vision of humanity's spiritual journey. During his readings, Edgar Cayce spoke extensively about soul evolution, a concept that transcends mere physical existence. His perspective offers a profound insight into our collective journey, showing that we're all on a path of spiritual growth and transformation that spans far beyond a single lifetime. Cayce described how souls evolve through experiences across multiple planes of existence. In his framework, Earth isn't just our home. It's a spiritual classroom where we face challenges designed to help us grow. This evolution isn't linear or straightforward. It involves cycles of progression, sometimes regression, and always learning through the consequences of our choices. The hidden truth in Cayce's work is that our souls carry wisdom and memories from these accumulated experiences, even if our conscious minds don't recall them. When addressing the biblical story of Adam and Eve, Cayce offered a revolutionary interpretation that shocked many religious scholars of his time. Rather than viewing it as merely a historical account of two individuals, he saw it as a symbolic representation of all human souls' journey. This revelation reframes our understanding of ancient texts, suggesting they contain allegorical wisdom about the collective human experience. In Cayce's readings, the Garden of Eden represents a state of divine connection and harmony that all souls once experienced. The fall symbolizes our descent into material consciousness and separation from our spiritual awareness. This isn't presented as punishment, but as a necessary part of our soul's journey, an opportunity to exercise free will and learn through direct experience in the physical world. What makes this perspective so impactful is how it bridges traditional religious narratives with spiritual concepts that transcend any single faith tradition. It suggests that beneath our seemingly separate journeys lies a common spiritual heritage and destination. This universal pattern of soul development connects us, regardless of our cultural or religious backgrounds. The process Cayce described isn't about escaping the physical world, but rather about bringing spiritual awareness into our earthly experience. It's about recognizing the sacred purpose behind our everyday challenges and relationships. Each difficult decision, each moment of growth, each instance of compassion becomes part of this larger spiritual curriculum. I want to go even deeper into how Cayce's understanding of reincarnation played an essential role in this soul evolution process. The concept that our souls experience multiple lifetimes provides a framework that helps explain many of life's most perplexing questions about fairness, purpose, and human differences. If something in this explanation resonates with your own spiritual journey or intuition, write, "Soul evolution speaks to me," in the comments section below. Diving deeper into Edgar Cayce's cosmology reveals a profound interpretation of humanity's spiritual journey. The biblical fall wasn't just a religious parable. It represented a pivotal transformation in our collective consciousness. According to Cayce's readings, this wasn't about literal sin, but about our soul's gradual descent into materiality. We essentially chose to identify with physical existence rather than maintain our spiritual awareness. This shift fundamentally altered how we experienced reality. Before the fall, we possessed a natural connection to divine intelligence. Our spiritual essence was our primary identity. But as we became increasingly fascinated with physical experience, we began to view ourselves primarily as bodies rather than souls. This subtle but powerful shift in perspective created the separation that spiritual traditions have described as the fall from grace. What's particularly illuminating about Cayce's perspective is how he understood the pre-Adamic beings mentioned in various ancient texts. Rather than interpreting them as a separate creation before Adam, he saw them as representations of consciousness gradually taking physical form. These weren't different beings entirely. They were earlier expressions of the same soul essence that would eventually manifest as fully physical humans. This gradual materialization process reflects the journey of consciousness itself. We didn't suddenly appear in physical bodies. Our presence here was the culmination of a gradual densification of energy into matter. The soul's decision to experience physical reality wasn't instantaneous, but occurred through progressive stages of manifestation. Behind these revelations lies a profound message about human identity. We aren't merely physical beings having occasional spiritual experiences. We're spiritual beings navigating a physical journey. This perspective completely reorients how we might understand our purpose here. The physical world isn't our native environment, but a classroom we've entered for specific experiences and growth. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how Cayce's understanding of ancient civilizations fits into this cosmic narrative. These weren't just historical footnotes, but critical chapters in humanity's spiritual evolution. Each civilization represented a different expression of consciousness, manifesting particular qualities and lessons that contributed to our collective development. The implications of this perspective are immense. If we truly are spiritual beings, temporarily inhabiting physical forms, then our entire approach to life might be reconsidered. Our struggles, achievements, relationships, and even our suffering take on new meaning when viewed as part of an eternal soul's journey, rather than the totality of our existence. What's most fascinating is how these ancient insights resonate with modern quantum physics, which increasingly suggests that consciousness itself may be fundamental to reality rather than merely an emergent property of brain function. This convergence between ancient wisdom and cutting-edge science points to revelations that could transform our understanding of human potential. If you're finding these connections as mind-expanding as I do, write in the comments, "My consciousness is eternal." These spiritual interpretations reveal a far more complex story than what most religions teach. What's fascinating about Edgar Cayce's readings is how they weave together a narrative where Adam wasn't simply the first man created from dust, but rather represented a pivotal moment in our spiritual evolution. Adam, in this context, symbolizes the complete immersion of spiritual beings into physical matter. It wasn't a fall from grace as much as it was a profound transformation, the moment when souls fully embrace the material experience. This perspective changes everything about how we view human origins. Rather than being created as physical beings from the start, we were spiritual entities who gradually became more material until that final transition that the Adam story represents. When I first encountered this concept, it challenged everything I thought I knew about human history. The idea that our consciousness has been on such an epic journey through different states of materiality offers a much richer tapestry than the simplified version most of us learned as children. Even more mind-bending are Cayce's references to ancient civilizations that mainstream history doesn't acknowledge. His readings frequently mentioned the Atlanteans and Lemurians, advanced civilizations that existed before recorded history. These weren't just primitive societies, but highly evolved cultures with technologies and spiritual understandings that in some ways may have surpassed our own. The Atlanteans, according to Cayce, had mastered crystal technologies and energy manipulation, while the Lemurians were deeply connected to the natural world and possessed remarkable intuitive abilities. These weren't just mythological places, but real civilizations, whose souls have reincarnated in our current era, bringing with them subconscious memories and talents from these previous epochs. This hidden history suggests that humanity's journey has been cyclical rather than linear. We may not be climbing steadily upward from primitive beginnings, but rather recovering knowledge and awareness that was once commonplace in these earlier civilizations. The déjà vu moments and inexplicable fascinations many people have with certain ancient cultures might be glimpses of these past connections. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how these ancient civilizations allegedly ended and what lessons their demise might hold for our current global challenges. The parallels between their stories and our present situation contain revelations that might help us navigate our own critical moment in history. If something about these ancient civilizations resonates with you on an intuitive level, type "ancient memory activated" in the comments. It's remarkable how many people feel an unexplained connection to civilizations they've never been taught existed. What Cayce revealed about the serpent completely transforms our understanding of this pivotal biblical symbol. Rather than a literal reptile, he saw the serpent as the embodiment of desire itself, that internal pull toward material experience and self-gratification that exists within every human consciousness. This interpretation elevates the Genesis story beyond a simple tale about a talking snake and forbidden fruit. The revelation carries profound implications for our spiritual journey. Think about it. If the serpent represents desire, then temptation isn't something external that happens to us. It's an internal force, an aspect of our consciousness that we must recognize and integrate, rather than simply resist or deny. This perspective aligns with many esoteric traditions that view spiritual development as the conscious transformation of our desires rather than their suppression. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining Cayce's understanding of Adam and Eve. Their story isn't just about two specific individuals who lived long ago. Instead, it represents the universal journey of every soul that enters the material world. Each of us faces the same fundamental choice they faced: to identify with our ego self, separate from the divine, or to maintain our connection with our higher nature even as we navigate the physical realm. This decision point reveals the hidden truth behind much of our daily struggle. Every time we choose fear over love, separation over unity, or material gratification over spiritual alignment, we're reenacting that original choice in the garden. It's a pattern repeated countless times throughout human history, yet we rarely recognize it for what it is. The beauty in Cayce's interpretation lies in its empowering message. If the fall represents a choice rather than a punishment, then redemption isn't about appeasing an angry deity, but about making a different choice, one that realigns us with our divine nature. This perspective transforms religion from a system of rules and restrictions into a roadmap for consciousness expansion. When we view the biblical narrative through this lens, we discover that these ancient stories contain psychological insights that modern science is only beginning to articulate. They speak to the fundamental nature of human consciousness and our capacity for both self-deception and profound awakening. The Eden story, in particular, represents that critical moment when human consciousness became self-aware enough to perceive itself as separate from the whole. This separation brought both tremendous creative potential and profound existential anxiety, the exact spiritual challenge we still face today. If this deeper interpretation of the Eden story resonates with your own spiritual journey, write "Awakening in the Garden" in the comments below. Now let's explore how Cayce's vision of Christ fits into this cosmic drama. The timing of Edgar Cayce's readings couldn't have been more significant. His most prolific years coincided with some of America's darkest chapters, the Great Depression and World War II. As families struggled with unemployment and financial ruin, as young men marched off to battle with uncertain returns, Cayce offered something precious, a framework for understanding suffering that provided deeper meaning and purpose. His readings suggested that life's challenges weren't random or punitive, but opportunities for soul growth. This perspective offered a profound transformation in how people viewed their hardships. Rather than victims of circumstance, they could see themselves as spiritual beings on a meaningful journey. For many Americans navigating those turbulent decades, this reframing provided not just comfort, but a sense of agency during times when so much seemed beyond control. One of Cayce's most revolutionary contributions was his approach to biblical interpretation. At a time when literal readings of Scripture dominated American Christianity, Cayce proposed something radical yet deeply resonant. He suggested that Genesis, particularly the creation story and accounts of Adam and Eve, represented symbolic spiritual truths rather than historical events. According to Cayce, the 7 days of creation corresponded to stages of consciousness evolution. Adam's sleep, during which Eve was created, symbolized humanity's descent from spiritual awareness into material existence. The Garden of Eden represented a higher state of consciousness, and the fall signified humanity's drift toward materialism and separation from our divine nature. This symbolic reading aligned with his broader concept that we are all spiritual beings having a human experience, not the other way around. This revelation allowed many to reconcile their spiritual beliefs with emerging scientific understandings about evolution and the age of the Earth, a reconciliation that remains relevant in today's discussions about science and faith. What makes this interpretation particularly fascinating is how it bridges ancient wisdom traditions with modern understandings of personal growth. The biblical narrative, when viewed through Cayce's lens, becomes less about distant historical events and more about the inner landscape of human consciousness, the hidden truths of our own spiritual development. The impact of these readings extended far beyond theoretical discussions. People found practical guidance for navigating life's challenges. The Sleeper Prophet's insights suggested that our current circumstances, however difficult, are part of a larger pattern of soul development stretching across many lifetimes. This perspective offers both accountability and compassion. We create our experiences through our choices, yet we're also eternally supported in our journey toward greater awareness. Now, I want to go even deeper into how Cayce's understanding of ancient texts revealed patterns that continue to resonate with spiritual seekers today. His approach to Scripture wasn't about dogma, but about uncovering universal principles that transcend any single religious tradition. If something in Cayce's approach to interpreting Genesis resonates with your own spiritual journey, write in the comments, "This speaks to my soul." Exploring Cayce's interpretation of Eden reveals a profound shift in our understanding of biblical narratives. When Cayce tapped into the Akashic records, he described Eden not as a geographical location we could pinpoint on a map, but as a state of consciousness, a vibrational frequency that early humans experienced. This perspective transforms the entire Genesis story from a literal tale about a garden with forbidden fruit into a metaphor for humanity's spiritual journey. Think about it. If Eden represents a state of being rather than a physical place, then the fall described in Genesis isn't about being banged from a location, but rather about a shift in consciousness, a descent from higher awareness into denser, more material existence. This interpretation aligns with many wisdom traditions that speak of humanity's journey from spirit into matter, suggesting that our current physical experience is just one stage in our soul's evolution. This consciousness-based interpretation reveals the hidden truth behind one of humanity's oldest stories, offering us a roadmap for our own spiritual journey back to that elevated state of awareness. The story of Cain and Abel takes on entirely new dimensions through this lens as well. Rather than just being a tale of history's first murder, Cayce suggested this narrative symbolizes the inner conflict we all experience in our spiritual development. Cain represents the material, earthly aspects of our nature, our attachments to physical existence, ego, and worldly desires. Abel embodies the spiritual aspects, our higher consciousness, intuition, and connection to divine principles. When Cain slays Abel in the story, it's not just about fratricide, but illustrates how our material nature can temporarily overcome our spiritual awareness. The mark of Cain symbolizes the karmic imprint this internal conflict leaves on our soul's journey. This interpretation offers a profound revelation about the battle within each of us between our higher and lower natures. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how these ancient stories, when viewed through Cayce's lens, offer practical wisdom for navigating our personal transformation. The biblical narratives stop being distant historical accounts and become intimate reflections of our own psychological and spiritual experiences, providing a framework for understanding the decisions we make daily between our material desires and spiritual calling. Have you ever noticed how these ancient stories seem to speak directly to internal conflicts you've experienced? If this interpretation of Eden and Cain and Abel as internal spiritual states rather than literal history resonates with your own journey, write in the comments, "The garden is within." Now, I want to go even deeper into this revelation that continues to shake the very foundation of our scriptural understanding. Cayce makes a profoundly important point about the choice between ego and service being universal. It's not just a biblical concept, but a fundamental human dilemma that spans across time, culture, and belief systems. This moment of decision is something we all face countless times throughout our lives, sometimes daily. Do we choose to serve our own interests, or do we choose to serve something greater? The depth of this insight transforms how we view not just Scripture, but our own personal journeys. But there's another bombshell revelation that rarely gets discussed in traditional religious settings: the existence of other humans outside of Adam and Eve's family. This is where the conventional narrative begins to unravel in fascinating ways. If we carefully examine Genesis 4, after Cain kills Abel and is banished, the text clearly indicates he feared others would kill him. He then goes to the land of Nod, takes a wife, and builds a city. Think about that for a moment. Who would populate this city if only his immediate family existed? This revelation isn't meant to diminish faith, but rather to expand our understanding of these ancient texts. The biblical narrative becomes less about literal historical documentation and more about profound spiritual truths conveyed through story. The garden narrative represents something much deeper: humanity's collective awakening to consciousness, moral awareness, and the fundamental choice between self-centeredness and selflessness. When we view Scripture through this lens, it becomes infinitely richer. We're not just reading about two isolated individuals in a garden, but about the universal human experience of awakening to consciousness and responsibility. This perspective helps bridge the apparent gap between scientific understanding of human origins and spiritual truth. The awakening consciousness represented by Adam and Eve is something that likely happened gradually across human populations, as we evolved the capacity for abstract thinking, moral reasoning, and spiritual awareness. It's the story of how we became fully human in the deepest sense, not just physically, but spiritually and morally. What truly matters isn't the historical specifics, but the eternal patterns these stories reveal about human nature, our relationship with the divine, and our ongoing struggle between ego and service. These are the hidden truths that continue to resonate thousands of years later, offering guidance for our own personal transformations. If you've had a moment where this interpretation suddenly brings clarity to questions you've struggled with, write "awakening" in the comments. I'd love to know how many of you are experiencing this shift in perspective too. Beyond these curious details lies an even more profound revelation about our ancient origins. Consider the enigma of Cain's wife, a detail that has perplexed biblical scholars for centuries. If Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel were supposedly the first humans, then who did Cain marry after being banished? The answer challenges our entire understanding of biblical chronology. According to the Edgar Cayce readings, Cain's wife represented evidence of a much larger human population already existing outside the Garden of Eden narrative. This doesn't diminish the biblical story, but rather expands its context. The Eden tale wasn't describing the beginning of all humanity, but rather a specific spiritual journey of particular souls who volunteered for an important evolutionary experiment. This interpretation transforms our understanding of ancient spiritual texts. Instead of reading them as literal historical accounts with troubling inconsistencies, we can see them as sophisticated metaphorical teachings about consciousness evolution. The fruit of knowledge represents a pivotal moment in human development, not a sin, but a necessary, if challenging, step in our collective journey. Cayce's psychic insights suggest multiple waves of spiritual beings entering physical form long before the Adam and Eve narrative. These earlier soul groups manifested bodies through different processes than physical birth as we understand it today. Some skeptics dismiss such claims as fantasy, but interestingly, many indigenous traditions worldwide contain similar accounts of ancient human origins involving multiple creations and different types of early humans. The revelation here isn't just historical curiosity, it's a fundamental shift in how we might understand our purpose. If the conventional timeline of human existence is incomplete, what other aspects of our cosmic journey might we have misunderstood? The implications ripple through every aspect of how we define ourselves. This broader perspective on humanity's origins provides a framework that actually harmonizes many religious and scientific narratives rather than placing them in conflict. The journey of consciousness into matter wasn't a single event, but an unfolding process across vast epochs of time, a perspective that aligns with both spiritual wisdom and evolutionary science when viewed through a wider lens. What's truly remarkable about Cayce's explanations is how they integrate seemingly contradictory belief systems into a cohesive whole. Whether you approach human origins from a religious text, indigenous oral history, or modern archaeological findings, this expanded view accommodates multiple perspectives without diminishing any of them. Now I want to go even deeper into how these alternative origin stories might explain some of the most persistent mysteries in human development, those evolutionary leaps that conventional theories struggle to account for. If any of these ideas about our ancient origins resonate with you, write "ancient wisdom" in the comments below. What fascinates me about Edgar Cayce is his incredible foresight. He understood that his work wasn't just for his contemporaries, but for us, generations yet unborn when he gave his readings. Cayce meticulously preserved his teachings, with his association documenting over 14,000 psychic readings covering health, spirituality, past lives, and prophecies. This treasure trove of wisdom continues to guide spiritual seekers today, with the Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach serving as the custodian of his legacy. But perhaps the most profound revelation in Cayce's work is how it reimagines humanity's journey. According to his readings, our story doesn't begin in the Garden of Eden, as many believe. It's far more expansive and ancient. Cayce described human souls as sparks of the divine that existed long before physical bodies. In this cosmic narrative, we chose to experience the material realm, gradually descending through dimensions of consciousness until we became fully physical beings. This perspective transforms how we understand our spiritual journey. Rather than fallen creatures seeking redemption, we are eternal travelers on an evolutionary path of consciousness. Our challenges and struggles aren't punishments, but necessary experiences for soul growth. This reframes everything about our existence, suggesting we are not broken beings needing salvation, but divine consciousness temporarily experiencing human form. What's particularly striking is how this narrative aligns with both ancient wisdom traditions and aspects of quantum physics. Many Eastern philosophies similarly describe consciousness as primary, with physical reality as a projection or manifestation of mind. Meanwhile, quantum physics continues to reveal the observer effect, how consciousness itself appears to influence material reality at the subatomic level. These connections reveal a hidden truth about our nature. We are not merely physical beings having occasional spiritual experiences, but spiritual beings navigating a physical journey. This understanding has profound implications for how we approach life's challenges, relationships, and even our deepest questions about purpose and meaning. The transformative power in Cayce's work isn't just about historical curiosities or supernatural abilities. It's about awakening to a grander vision of who we truly are. This expanded perspective offers both comfort and challenge. Comfort in knowing our eternal nature, and challenge in realizing our responsibility to grow and evolve consciously. Now, I want to go even deeper into this cosmic history that Cayce revealed about humanity's true origins and our journey through consciousness. As we continue exploring, consider how these ancient understandings might illuminate your own spiritual path. If any of these concepts resonate with your intuition or personal experiences, type "soul remembering" in the comments below. As we explore Cayce's reinterpretation of the biblical narrative, we find something truly fascinating. Rather than viewing Scripture as a mere historical record, he saw it as a rich tapestry of spiritual wisdom encoded in stories and symbols. For Cayce, the Bible wasn't just about external events, it was a profound map of inner spiritual transformation. The Bible is the symbolic account of the soul's journey, he often explained. This perspective completely reframes how we understand sacred texts. The Garden of Eden, for instance, becomes not just a physical paradise lost, but a representation of our original state of consciousness, one where we existed in perfect harmony with divine forces before becoming entangled in material existence. What makes this interpretation so powerful is how it brings these ancient stories into Immediate relevance for our lives today. The exodus from Egypt transforms from a historical migration to a universal symbol of liberation from our own personal bondage. The promised land becomes the enlightened consciousness we're all seeking. This perspective reveals something profound about humanity's journey through time. According to Cayce's readings, our entire history follows distinct spiritual cycles, periods of enlightenment followed by inevitable decline, only to rise again. These cycles aren't random, but follow cosmic patterns that reveal the hidden rhythm behind human evolution. The lost civilizations that Cayce described, Lemuria, Atlantis, ancient Egypt, weren't just advanced in technology, but represented peaks in spiritual awareness that eventually collapsed under the weight of materialism and ego. Our current age, in this framework, is approaching another pivotal turning point in this grand cosmic pattern. What's particularly striking about these cycles is how they mirror our individual journeys of awakening and forgetting. Just as we personally experience moments of profound clarity, followed by periods of confusion, humanity collectively moves through these same patterns on a much larger timescale. The revelations in Cayce's work suggest that we're not simply passive observers of history, but active participants in a cosmic drama of consciousness evolution. Each civilization rises and falls not just through external forces, but through the collective spiritual and choices of its people. This places an extraordinary responsibility on each of us. Our individual spiritual development contributes directly to humanity's collective awakening. Now, I want to go even deeper into how Cayce's insights about these spiritual cycles reveal something crucial about our present moment. As we stand at this crossroads of human history, understanding these patterns offers us unprecedented clarity about the challenges and opportunities before us. If something in this resonates with your own spiritual journey, write "cycles of awakening" in the comments. I'd love to know if these ancient patterns speak to your experience too. Encoded within Cayce's personal readings lay some of his most transformative insights. While people came to him for help with health concerns or life problems, he often delivered much deeper wisdom. It's like going to a doctor for a headache and being told about the entire neurological system of existence. These seemingly random pronouncements, scattered across thousands of readings, paint a coherent picture when pieced together, revealing a cosmic understanding that transcends individual concerns. His perspective on the fall of man represents one of these revelations that fundamentally reshapes our understanding of spiritual history. Rather than the simplistic narrative of Adam and Eve disobeying God by eating forbidden fruit, Cayce described a much more profound journey of consciousness. He portrayed it as a series of soul choices, deliberate decisions made by spirits exploring the boundaries between material existence and divine connection. This wasn't just a one-time event in some ancient garden. According to Cayce, this fall represents an ongoing process of spiritual amnesia that each soul experiences. We aren't being punished for ancestral mistakes. We're experiencing the natural consequences of our own soul's choices across time. When understood this way, the concept of original sin transforms into something more like original responsibility, the recognition that our current circumstances reflect our soul's journey rather than cosmic punishment. The hidden truth here lies in recognizing our active participation in cosmic evolution. We weren't passive recipients of heavenly judgment, but conscious participants making choices about the nature of our embodiment. This perspective removes the shame-based framework that has dominated Western spiritual thought and replaces it with a model of ongoing spiritual development and growth. What's particularly fascinating about this interpretation is how it aligns with many esoteric traditions across diverse cultures. From Buddhist concepts of samsara to Gnostic teachings about the divine spark trapped in matter, we see echoes of this same understanding, that our material existence represents not a punishment, but a learning environment for souls. Now I want to go even deeper into the practical implications of this view. When we shift from seeing ourselves as fallen creatures deserving punishment to souls on an evolutionary journey, everything changes. Our relationship with our own perceived failures transforms. Our understanding of life's challenges takes on new meaning. Suddenly, the difficulties we face aren't random cruelties or divine retribution, but necessary experiences for our soul's growth. This perspective creates space for genuine compassion, both for ourselves and others, recognizing that we're all navigating different stages of the same journey home. The suffering we experience isn't meaningless, but part of a larger pattern of development. Our mistakes aren't permanent stains, but temporary lessons. If something in this explanation has shifted your perspective or resonated with your intuition about your own spiritual journey, write in the comments, "My soul recognizes this truth." This reflection invites us to consider Cayce's understanding of humanity's fall from grace as something far more nuanced than traditional interpretations suggest. For him, the fall wasn't merely an ancient event involving two people in a garden, but rather a universal pattern of consciousness making choices that drew it away from its spiritual nature. This perspective transforms our understanding of human suffering from divine punishment to natural consequence. We collectively chose paths that separated us from our divine connection, creating the conditions we now experience. The journey back to wholeness, according to Cayce's framework, requires recognition of our spiritual inheritance rather than simply atoning for ancestral mistakes. It's about awakening to our true nature and reclaiming what was always ours, divine consciousness expressing itself through human form. This revelation challenges us to see ourselves not as fallen creatures desperate for salvation, but as spiritual beings navigating our way back to an awareness we willingly set aside. Despite the progressive nature of his insights, Cayce faced substantial criticism during his lifetime. Religious leaders often questioned his unorthodox methods and interpretations that seemed to contradict established doctrine. Yet what many critics missed was the profound depth of Cayce's Christian faith. Behind the psychic readings and metaphysical language stood a man deeply committed to Christ's teachings. He didn't see his work as replacing Christianity, but rather as revealing its deeper, mystical dimensions that had been obscured through centuries of dogmatic interpretation. This tension between innovation and tradition defined Cayce's spiritual journey. He maintained that everything revealed through his readings ultimately harmonized with Christ's message when properly understood. For him, concepts like reincarnation weren't foreign imports, but hidden truths within the Christian tradition itself, elements that had been removed or de-emphasized over centuries of church politics and doctrinal disputes. The hidden truth behind Cayce's controversial teachings was his unwavering commitment to spiritual transformation through Christ consciousness. He believed that awakening to our divine nature wasn't just compatible with Christianity, but represented its ultimate fulfillment. This perspective bridges ancient wisdom with modern spiritual seeking, offering a path that honors tradition while expanding its boundaries. What makes Cayce's approach so compelling is that it doesn't require abandoning one's faith to embrace a broader spiritual understanding. Instead, it invites a deeper exploration of that faith, uncovering layers of meaning that speak directly to our contemporary spiritual hungers. His readings consistently emphasized that spiritual growth isn't about adopting new beliefs, but recognizing truths that resonate with our innermost being. If you found yourself nodding along as I've explained these concepts, type "awakened perspective" in the comments. Now, I want to go even deeper into how Cayce's understanding of these spiritual principles manifested in practical guidance for those who sought his help. Even more fascinating is Cayce's profoundly inclusive view of spiritual redemption. While religious traditions often create distinctions about who can achieve salvation and under what terms, Cayce repeatedly emphasized that redemption is universally accessible to all souls. This perspective represents a dramatic departure from conventional dogma that sometimes limits salvation to specific believers or behaviors. Every soul has the opportunity for redemption, Cayce stated in one reading. The journey back to the Creator is available to all who seek it. This expansive view aligns with contemporary spiritual movements that emphasize universal compassion and spiritual inclusion. It suggests a divine plan far more accommodating than many traditional religious frameworks allow for, a perspective that offers immense hope to those who may feel alienated by conventional religious boundaries. The transformation this perspective offers is profound. Instead of viewing spirituality as an exclusive club with strict membership requirements, Cayce presented a cosmic vision where every soul's journey ultimately leads homeward, regardless of their current understanding or position. When approaching biblical stories, Cayce demonstrated remarkable interpretive creativity. Rather than taking scriptural accounts as literal historical records, he consistently reframed them as profound allegories about spiritual choices and soul journeys. This approach reveals hidden truths beneath familiar narratives. For example, in one reading discussing Adam and Eve, Cayce suggested this wasn't merely about two individuals in a garden, but rather represented the soul's journey from unity with the divine into the realm of duality and material experience. Similarly, the story of the prodigal son wasn't just a parable about familial relationships, but a cosmic drama about the soul's wandering and eventual return to its divine source. This interpretive lens gave biblical stories universal relevance beyond their historical or cultural contexts. Through Cayce's readings, ancient narratives became living roadmaps for understanding our own spiritual development and challenges. The Garden of Eden becomes less about a historical fall from grace and more about the soul's ongoing navigation between spiritual awareness and material temptation. The revelations in Cayce's approach helped countless seekers find deeper meaning in religious texts they may have previously dismissed or taken only at face value. By stripping away literalism, he revealed the psychological and spiritual wisdom embedded within religious symbolism, making these stories accessible tools for personal growth rather than mere historical accounts requiring blind belief. Now, I want to go even deeper into how Cayce's interpretations create a bridge between ancient wisdom and modern psychology, revealing patterns that explain why we struggle with the same core challenges across centuries. If something in this explanation resonates with your own spiritual journey, type "Seeking Beyond Dogma" in the comments below. Stepping back and viewing our civilization through this spiritual lens reveals something profound about our collective journey. The ongoing tension between spiritual ascent and material obsession isn't just an individual struggle. It's the fundamental rhythm of human evolution itself. When I look at where we stand today, I see unmistakable signs that humanity is approaching a critical threshold of awakening. Think about it. Despite all the chaos in our headlines, more people than ever are questioning the purely materialistic paradigm. The explosive growth of interest in meditation, conscious living, and alternative healing isn't just a passing trend. It's evidence of a deeper transformation brewing beneath the surface. This yearning for connection to something greater than ourselves is embedded in our very nature, and no amount of technological distraction can permanently suppress it. What's particularly fascinating is how today's conflicts mirror age-old patterns of soul choices. Throughout history, humanity has repeatedly faced the same essential decision between harmony and discord, between cooperation and domination. The names and faces change, but the underlying spiritual dynamics remain remarkably consistent. We're witnessing the modern manifestation of an ancient struggle, a collective shadow work playing out on the world stage. Behind the scenes of global events, there's an invisible current pulling us toward greater awareness. When I speak with people across different backgrounds and beliefs, I'm struck by how many share a sense that we're living through a pivotal moment in human history. There's a growing recognition that our challenges, environmental, political, social, aren't just practical problems, but symptoms of a deeper spiritual disconnect. The revelations coming through various wisdom traditions all point to a future where humanity collectively recognizes the limitations of purely material pursuits. This isn't wishful thinking, it's the natural progression of consciousness. Just as individual awakening often follows a period of intense suffering or questioning, our global society appears to be moving through necessary growing pains before a significant shift in perspective. What makes this journey so powerful is that it doesn't require everyone to adopt identical beliefs. The path toward collective spiritual maturity honors diversity while recognizing our fundamental interconnection. It's about expanding our identity beyond isolated selves to embrace our role within the greater whole, a perspective that transforms how we approach everything from personal relationships to planetary challenges. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring what this spiritual evolution might actually look like in practical terms and how we can participate in it regardless of our individual backgrounds or beliefs. The hidden truth is that each of us holds a piece of this unfolding story. If what I've shared resonates with your own observations about humanity's spiritual journey, write in the comments, "I see the awakening too." I'm curious how many of you have noticed these same patterns emerging in your own experience. While Edgar Cayce offered profound insights into our spiritual nature, perhaps his most transformative teaching was the idea that spiritual practices aren't just self-improvement exercises, they're reunion rituals. Cayce viewed meditation, prayer, and service as bridge-building activities that reconnect us with divine harmony. This wasn't about adding something new to our lives, but rather about remembering and reactivating our inherent connection to universal consciousness. When I first encountered this perspective, it completely shifted my approach. Rather than seeing meditation as simply a stress reduction technique, I began to recognize it as a journey back to my natural state of being. Cayce believed we all possess an innate attunement with cosmic forces. It's our birthright, not some distant achievement only available to gurus on mountaintops. But here's where things get truly fascinating. Cayce taught that every single compassionate action we take is part of a much larger cosmic correction. He viewed human history as a series of spiritual falls and returns, collective movements away from and back toward divine consciousness. In this grand narrative, even the simplest act of kindness isn't isolated. It's part of a universal healing process, offsetting ancient spiritual missteps. Think about that for a moment. The helping hand you extend to someone in need isn't just changing their day. It's participating in the cosmic rebalancing of energies that have been out of alignment for centuries. This gives our everyday choices extraordinary significance in Cayce's cosmology. This revelation certainly challenged me to reconsider the hidden impact of my daily decisions. When Cayce spoke of these historical spiritual falls, he wasn't just referring to biblical stories or ancient myths. He described precise moments when humanity collectively chose material advancement over spiritual awareness, when we prioritized separation over unity. These weren't just abstract concepts to him, they were specific events in our shared soul journey. Now I want to go even deeper into how Cayce envisioned this cosmic correction playing out in our individual lives. He didn't just identify the problem. He offered remarkably specific guidance about how each of us participates in this resurrection of consciousness. The soul's journey, according to Cayce, isn't simply about personal enlightenment. It's about contributing to a universal awakening that transcends time itself. If any of this resonates with your own spiritual explorations, type "soul awakening" in the comments. I'm curious how many of you have experienced these moments of reconnection that seem to transcend ordinary reality. The truly groundbreaking aspect of Cayce's work lies in how it democratizes the spiritual journey. Unlike many traditions that place enlightenment as the domain of only the most dedicated monks or ascetics, Cayce revealed that spiritual evolution is our universal inheritance. Each soul, regardless of current circumstances, is on this grand trajectory of development across multiple lifetimes. This perspective transforms how we view both ourselves and others around us. The person sitting next to you on the bus, the colleague who frustrates you at work, the family member with whom you struggle to connect, all are souls on their own unique developmental paths, gathering experiences that will ultimately lead to greater awareness. This recognition naturally cultivates compassion when we realize that difficult people aren't permanent obstacles, but fellow travelers who may simply be at different stages of their journey. What's particularly liberating about this cosmic narrative is how it frees us from the constricting timelines of conventional history. Think about it. Most of us operate within a historical framework that spans a few thousand years at most. Our identity feels contained within this tiny sliver of time. But Cayce's revelations suggest we've been participants in a story spanning hundreds of thousands of years, if not millions. Our souls have likely witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations we've never read about in history books. This expanded time frame doesn't just add more years to our existence, it fundamentally alters how we process our current challenges. When you recognize that your consciousness has navigated countless trials across millennia, today's difficulties take on a different proportion. The revelation of this vast human story offers a profound liberation from the psychological constriction of seeing ourselves as merely products of recent history. Consider the hidden transformation this perspective triggers in your worldview. No longer are you simply an individual born in a particular year, limited by the cultural circumstances of your birth. Instead, you're a seasoned soul, continuing a journey of remarkable depth and significance. This realization doesn't remove life's difficulties, but it does provide the broader context needed to navigate them with greater wisdom and patience. Now I want to go even deeper into what this expanded view means for how we approach our daily lives. The recognition of our soul's extensive journey invites us to ask more profound questions about our current incarnation. What specific lessons might we be here to learn? What karmic patterns might we be working to resolve? These aren't abstract philosophical inquiries, but practical frameworks for understanding our recurring challenges. If you've resonated with what we've covered so far about our expansive spiritual journey across time, write "Ancient Soul" in the comments. I'd love to know how many of you feel that connection to humanity's deeper story. Edgar Cayce's prophecies offer us more than just glimpses into potential futures. They invite a profound transformation in how we understand our place in the cosmic tapestry. When we examine his readings about ancient civilizations like Atlantis and Egypt, we're not just exploring history, we're uncovering the hidden truths about human potential that have been buried by time and skepticism. What makes Cayce's work so remarkable is how it bridges the gap between ancient wisdom and modern scientific discoveries. His descriptions of energy fields, vibrational medicine, and the interconnectedness of all things seem mystical in his time, yet today's quantum physics and holistic medicine are beginning to validate concepts he described almost a century ago. This convergence isn't coincidental. It suggests a gradual remembering of knowledge our ancestors may have possessed. The soul readings Cayce provided also reveal something profound about our journey through multiple lifetimes. They suggest that our present challenges, talents, and even relationships stem from soul decisions made long ago. This perspective invites a radical shift in how we perceive our current struggles, not as random hardships, but as deliberately chosen lessons for our spiritual evolution. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring the practical applications of Cayce's wisdom in our daily lives. His readings consistently emphasized that prophecy was never meant to instill fear or fatalism, but rather to awaken us to our responsibility in co-creating our reality. The future, according to Cayce, is not carved in stone, but shaped by our collective consciousness and individual choices. Consider the revelations about the earth changes Cayce predicted. While some interpret these as doom and gloom, scenarios, a more nuanced understanding, suggests these shifts, both geological and societal, create opportunities for humanity to realign with more harmonious ways of living. The upheavals we witness today might actually be birth pains of a new consciousness emerging on our planet. Cayce's work also illuminates the importance of daily spiritual practice, not as religious obligation, but as practical energy management. His suggestions about meditation, dream work, and intuitive development were remarkably ahead of his time, offering pathways to tap into our inner guidance system. This aspect of his teachings empowers us to become active participants rather than passive observers in our spiritual unfoldment. What's particularly striking is how Cayce's readings transcend religious boundaries while honoring the essence of all faith traditions. He saw the Christ consciousness not as exclusive to Christianity, but as a universal pattern of divine love that each soul is destined to embody. This inclusive vision offers a blueprint for spiritual unity that respects diversity, something our fragmented world desperately needs. If you're finding these connections between Cayce's work and your own spiritual journey illuminating, write in the comments, "The sleeping prophet awakened something in me." Now, as we continue exploring the legacy and predictions of Edgar Cayce, as we reach this point in our exploration of Edgar Cayce's remarkable legacy, I hope you're beginning to see how his insights might illuminate your own path in unexpected ways. His work reminds us that we're not merely passengers on this cosmic journey, but active participants with profound creative potential. The beauty of engaging with Cayce's readings isn't about accepting every prediction or concept without question. Rather, it's about allowing these perspectives to expand our thinking beyond the limitations we've inadvertently placed on ourselves and our understanding of reality. If something in this conversation has resonated with you today, perhaps a new way of viewing your challenges or a deeper appreciation for your intuitive capacities, I'd love to hear about it. The community around this channel continues to share fascinating personal insights that enrich our collective understanding. If you've followed this journey all the way through, drop a comment saying, "The sleeping prophet awakened something in me." I read every comment, and your thoughts genuinely help shape future explorations of these profound topics. If you found value in these perspectives, leaving a like helps others discover this conversation too. And remember, this is just one thread in a much larger tapestry we're exploring together. I've prepared another video that delves into how Cayce's health readings are finding validation in today's integrative medicine. Click through when you're ready to continue this fascinating journey with me.